Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Preacher Boys podcast. Today's episode is based on information I've gathered from multiple anonymous sources that are familiar with the internal operations of Liberty Baptist Church in Durham, North Carolina, as well as recordings of 2 church meetings that were held and not otherwise broadcast. And the allegations that I'm going to mention in this particular episode are not my own. Any individuals referenced are presumed innocent of any wrongdoing or criminal activity until proven guilty in a court of law. I've made significant efforts to verify the information presented in this episode, and in spite of that, some details remain unconfirmed due to the sensitive nature of the events and the desire of sources to remain anonymous. And I try to make clear when something has been specifically said by leadership within the church or by Pastor Scott Gray, and when something is unconfirmed but shared with me through one of these anonymous sources.
I've not done one thing biblically that disqualifies me as pastor.
That's right.
I'm telling you that right now.
Pastor Scott Gray spoke these words to the congregation of Liberty Baptist Church in Durham, North Carolina, shortly after announcing his resignation on September 10th, 2025. In his less than 13-minute statement, Gray admitted that church finances were in disarray, that loans had been taken out without board knowledge, and that his failure to supervise staff left the church's records in a mess.
In June, Miss Kristen Green came to me and offered her services to help with the finances. She is finishing up her accounting degree, and it was a godsend. And Miss Kristen has and is doing a phenomenal job, and I want to say thank you for that. I appreciate her work for the Lord. Kristen came to me, and after working, getting started with that, another accountant that was helping guide her started working through our QuickBooks, and she let me know that she felt that our QuickBooks, this gentleman, in her words, it's in a mess.
If you want to hear Pastor Gray's full statement, you can actually head over to preacherboys.substack.com, where I have the full, complete statement from Pastor Gray, as well as the full statement from the church available to listen to in its entirety, but I'll play certain clips throughout this episode for the context that you need. Pastor Gray kept the details vague, saying things like,
I nor my family have done anything to violate any of the biblical requirements for the office of pastor.
During his statement, he maintained that he was leaving to keep the church from being harmed or splitting, rather than as a consequence of wrongdoing on his part.
In the spirit of peace and healing effective tonight, I will be resigning as pastor.
Gray acknowledged one outstanding $26,215 loan with Truist Bank tied to a 2018 property purchase, along with a balloon note of $96,900. For those of you that are listening, a balloon note is a type of loan where the borrower makes relatively small payments, often just covering the interest or partial amount of the principal over the life of the loan, and then owes a large balloon payment of the remaining balance at the end. He attempted to reassure members, citing account balances totaling just over $1 million, which by comparison made the outstanding balances seem small. However, on September 14th, 2025, the church's leadership team told a very different story. Daniel Morrissey, the church music pastor, read a prepared statement from the leadership team. It painted a picture of extensive financial mismanagement and raised questions surrounding the ethics of Scott Gray's leadership and the involvement of his sons, Scotty, Philip, and Stephen, in the ministry. Again, you can listen to the church's full statement over at preacherboys.substack.com. Here are just a few of the issues that were raised by church leadership.
The concerns include, but are not limited to, inconsistent record keeping within QuickBooks, financial transactions that were not properly accounted for, 5 loans taken within 14 months with unclear purposes and use of those funds. In addition to this, the deacons and trustees were never made aware of these loans. Misuse of staff credit cards for personal purchases, including things like personal food, Grubhub, Starbucks, among others, personal travel, hotel, rental cars, Airbnb, and gas. A dating website relationship that led to a scam, resulting in a $3,400 loss. These examples, most occurring within a 90-day period, further eroded trust in Pastor Gray and his family's continued employment under his leadership. Additionally, while Pastor Gray was approved for a $38,000 annual housing allowance, records show he was actually receiving $46,948.02 annually for his housing. A portion of this total number was paid directly from the church checking account to his mortgage company. This practice was stopped once discovered. Though some personal purchases mentioned above were repaid, the majority were not. We are accountable before God to steward his resources faithfully, and this reality intensified the loss of confidence in Pastor Gray's leadership.
According to the statement, LBC currently carries $41,000 more in debt than it holds in all of its accounts combined.
We have a truist loan in the amount of $26,317, a First Citizens loan in the amount of $96,145, which would be for the house down at Victory and Guess. Additionally, we have church credit card debt just under $80,000. For those who did the quick math, we have around $41,000 more in debt than we have in our church accounts combined. Keep in mind that our church mortgage was paid off in 2020.
Sources I've talked to who are close to the church have estimated that the amount of loans and credit card charges were in the six figures, but I have not been able to confirm an exact number with the church, and they didn't give an exact number in the statement to the congregation. Beyond financial issues, they also raised ethical concerns. Leaders said that there were ethical concerns specifically involving Gray's sons, the three of whom served on staff.
Serious ethical concerns arose regarding employee behavior. The most public example was a TikTok video containing sexual themes. This conduct is clearly unbecoming of Christian leadership, particularly for those ministering to children and families. Further ethical issues involved Pastor Gray's sons. Though details will not be shared publicly in this moment to avoid unnecessary harm, we are available to discuss them privately for those seeking clarity. When confronted, Pastor Gray refused to remove his sons from staff, which was perceived by the board as partiality and a failure to uphold biblical accountability.
I recently reported that on September 8th, 2025, former Liberty Christian School principal and associate pastor Derek Kner announced his resignation, citing financial and ethical issues. A leaked copy of the resignation letter tendered by Kner began circulating shortly after it was sent to church leadership. It says, in part, "It is with a heavy heart and much prayer and fasting that I'm writing this letter. I have served the Lord and the people of Liberty Baptist Church and the teachers, parents, and students of Liberty Christian School for 39 years. I've been a faithful and loyal employee. However, just recently, I have both seen and been made aware of some situations, both financial and ethical, that I believe are wrong and do not exemplify Christ." He closes by saying, "After much prayerful consideration, I feel it is in the best interest of myself, my wife, and my family to resign my position at Liberty Baptist Church, effective immediately." Now, the erosion of trust in Gray as a leader began months earlier before all of this unfolded. On May 20th, 2025, Gray's brother-in-law, associate pastor and financial director Timothy Forgy, died by suicide after an allegation of abuse surfaced. The abuse took place during his time at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Longview, Texas, which is pastored by Bob Gray II, Scott Gray's brother. I interviewed Gray about this incident when it happened, and he presented himself as the one willing to pursue truth and as having a desire for transparency. Yet Liberty's leadership has made it explicitly clear that in the wake of Forgy's death, their confidence in Gray actually began to fracture. By June 2025, he was already facing scrutiny over his handling of finances and staff accountability. And on September 6, 2025, the Board of Trustees formally voted that Gray had disqualified himself from pastoral leadership. They cited financial mismanagement, ethical concerns, and a failure to hold staff accountable. They met him in his office to demand a resignation, offering a predetermined severance package. Gray initially declined, but ultimately he resigned 4 days later. In contrast to Gray's guarded farewell and vague statement, the church's remaining leadership has pledged transparency and reform. They've even brought Derek Kner, who previously resigned over these issues, back onto the church staff. They are also planning on an independent financial audit, consultation with attorney David Gibbs III of the National Center for Life and Liberty, and establishing new oversight measures.
We are choosing transparency. We are choosing accountability. We are choosing integrity.
I want to close by saying that I reached out to both the church and Pastor Scott Gray for comment on September 11th, 2025, but I have not yet received a response from either party. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Preacher Boys podcast. I will make any updates when necessary, but for now, I will see you on a future episode.